program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Madam Zian, to the headlines. The United Nations officially declares famine in the Gaza Strip. Secretary General Antonio Guterres says it's a man-made disaster, while UN agencies and organizations direct sharp criticism. The Israeli occupation stressing that famine-related deaths could amount to a war crime. Coming up next, the Israeli war machine continues to claim more lives in Gaza, with massacres leaving over 70 people dead since dawn Friday. The Ministry of Health rejects Israeli orders to evacuate hospitals, while the UN reports that the number of displaced people in the Strip has reached around 800,000. Next, to break the deadlock and end the crisis, the UN envoy to Libya has proposed a roadmap that includes unifying institutions through a single government. The Presidential Council welcomed the initiative and called for resolving disputes over electoral provisions or moving toward an alternative path. And in efforts to end the war in Ukraine, Moscow confirmed that no meeting is expected between the Russian and Ukrainian presidents. Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia is doing everything it can to prevent a meeting with Vladimir Putin, while Donald Trump is awaiting the two leaders' positions on holding a summit. Hello and welcome back to your nightly news. On Friday, the United Nations officially declared famine in Gaza, marking the first such declaration of its kind in the Middle East. UN experts said that 500,000 people are facing catastrophic hunger after months of warnings over the worsening humanitarian situation and the spread of hunger in the Palestinian enclave. The Rome-based Integrated Food Security Phase Classification (IPC) confirmed that Gaza Governorate, which covers about 20% of the Strip, is experiencing famine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed deep concern over the deteriorating humanitarian conditions in the Gaza Strip, describing the famine as a man-made disaster. In a statement, Guterres stressed the need for the Israeli authorities to ensure the availability of food and essential medical supplies for Gaza's population, warning that the current situation cannot continue without accountability. He also called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and urgent humanitarian access to civilians trapped under siege. The Food and Agriculture Organization, UNICEF, the World Food Programme, and the World Health Organization said that more than 500,000 people in Gaza are now trapped in a state of real famine. In a joint statement, the four UN agencies expressed grave concern over threats of a large-scale military assault on Gaza City, warning of further devastating consequences for civilians amid already dire humanitarian conditions. They urged unimpeded humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip in order to curb the rising number of deaths caused by hunger and malnutrition. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk said Friday that the outbreak of famine in northern Gaza is a direct result of measures taken by the Israeli government, and that deaths caused by starvation could amount to a war crime. Turk referred to the IPC report that officially declared famine in Gaza Governorate, stressing that the use of starvation as a method of warfare is itself a war crime.
The famine declared today in Gaza Governorate by the IPC is the direct result of actions taken by the Israeli government. It has unlawfully restricted the entry and distribution of humanitarian assistance and other goods necessary for the survival of the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. It is a war crime to use starvation as a method of warfare, and the resulting deaths may also amount to the war crime of willful killing. The Israeli authorities must take immediate steps to end the famine in the Gaza Governorate and prevent further loss of life across the Gaza Strip.
And for his part, UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Tom Fletcher described the famine in Gaza as a collective shame that demands urgent global action. In a press briefing in Geneva, Fletcher said famine in Gaza could have been avoided, but humanitarian efforts face continuous obstruction.
It is a famine in 2025, a 21st century famine, watched over by drones and the most advanced military technology in history. It is a famine openly promoted by some Israeli leaders as a weapon of war. It is a famine on all of our watch. Everyone owns this. The Gaza famine is the world's famine. It is a famine that asks, but what did you do? A famine that will and must haunt us all. It is a predictable and a preventable famine. A famine caused by cruelty, justified by revenge, enabled by indifference, and sustained by complicity.
The Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor said Friday that field data collected by its teams shows conditions in Gaza are far worse than outlined in the UN report. In a press release, it said, the UN's delayed famine declaration nonetheless confirms Israel deliberately created famine by blocking food and water from reaching the population. The group noted that more than 1.5 million people in Gaza are suffering severe hunger and called for a resolution to deploy a peacekeeping force to stop crimes against civilians and guarantee unhindered delivery of aid. And Hamas said the UN famine declaration in Geneva proves Israel is committing a crime against more than 2 million besieged people. In a statement, it welcomed the announcement despite its delay, saying Israel's denial and false claims expose a criminal attempt to cover up mass starvation. Hamas urged the UN and Security Council to act immediately to end the war and lift the blockade. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza confirmed that the UN declaration of famine in the Gaza Strip came late and that Palestinians had already paid a heavy price. In a special interview with Al24 News Channel, the Director General of the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, Munir al-Bursh, confirmed that more than 272 people in Gaza have died due to hunger and malnutrition, including more than 113 children, while over 500,000 others suffer from severe malnutrition.
We had documented many statistics of severe malnutrition, and we had called on international organizations, especially the United Nations, to declare a state of famine. Eventually, this demand was met, but it came too late, and its cost was heavy for us. Our children died, our sons died. Up until now, 272 people have died from malnutrition, more than 113 have been killed, and nearly 500,000 are suffering from severe and acute malnutrition. At this very moment, 500 children are in the hospitals of the Ministry of Health, all of them suffering from severe malnutrition.
Munir al-Bursh described the health situation in the Gaza Strip as catastrophic, stressing that the occupation has destroyed most hospitals, and those that are still operating do not meet the needs of the population due to the blockade.
There is great suffering in the hospitals of the Gaza Strip. Out of 38 hospitals, all were destroyed by the Israeli occupation, and we managed to rehabilitate about 16 of them. The number of hospital beds has also dropped by 75% of the total capacity. We used to have around 3,400 beds inside the hospitals, but today we are talking about only 1,202 beds, and this includes even intensive care unit beds.
As most of Gaza's population suffers from deadly famine, with its effects most visible on children, residents are now being forced to prepare for a new wave of displacement imposed by Israeli plans to seize full control of the Strip. Hossam Barkan has more details.
Carob, chamomile, and thyme. This is the food of Hatem, the 8-month-old infant from Gaza City. And Hatem is not an exception. If only he were. He is one of more than 40,000 infants under the age of 1 suffering from severe malnutrition. Their lives is gradually threatened by death, according to the Gaza government media office.
When it is available in the hospital, they gave me milk. Before that, in the past, my son is weaned from me, not breastfeeding, because there was no milk. I used to use natural herbs. I used carob, chamomile, and thyme. I tried everything because there was no milk substitutes. A carton of milk lasts 4 days for the child who is fully weaned. Milk became expensive, 200 shekels. No one could buy a carton of milk. It was not even available in the market.
Despite all this, Hatem is considered lucky to have received a bottle of milk when it was available at the hospital, compared to other children his age. The extreme starvation the children in the Gaza Strip are going through has reached its limits, leading to severe health complications, and most often ends in the death of the innocent child.
Mothers don't eat properly. Malnutrition among women leads to children not breastfeeding from their mothers. Is there a nutritional supplement in the markets? In the markets, there are no types of milk supplements, and the prices of milk are very expensive. Families can't buy it at the prices of 150 shekels and 200 shekels for a carton of milk. That is if it's available, and if they find it after efforts and struggle.
The condition of adults is not much different from that of their young ones. Perhaps the main difference lies in the older ones' ability to endure, but for how long? This is how Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are living, between two fires, the fire of chasing a bag of flour and the fire of a new displacement imposed upon them by the plans of the war criminal Netanyahu's government, which has approved the decision to occupy the entire Gaza Strip, a situation that, according to UN agencies, most of the population will not be able to cope with. And it will be the final hope of ending the most brutal and barbaric genocide in modern history.
Still within the Palestinian file, at least 71 Palestinians were killed and others injured in heavy Israeli airstrikes on several areas across the Gaza Strip since dawn Friday. According to medical sources in Gaza, dozens of Palestinians were killed, with at least 71 bodies brought to hospitals, including children and women, after Israeli airstrikes hit the Strip. The same sources said that people remain trapped under the rubble and in the streets. The Palestinian Ministry of Health announced its rejection of any measures that would undermine what remains of the healthcare system in Gaza. This came after Israeli warnings to medical bodies and organizations to transfer patients from Gaza City hospitals to the south as part of its plan to seize the city. The ministry stressed that such a move would deprive more than 1 million Palestinians of their right to medical care and put the lives of patients and the wounded in imminent danger. The United Nations announced that the number of Palestinians displaced in Gaza due to Israeli attacks has surpassed 796,000 since mid-March. UN Deputy Spokesperson Daniela Gross said in a press briefing that around 17,000 new displacements were recorded last week alone, between August 12 and 20. Moving on to other news, Libyan Presidential Council Chairman Mohammed al-Menfi said it's time to give the Libyan people the chance to determine their own destiny, either by holding a referendum on disputed provisions of the electoral laws or by pursuing an alternative path if disagreements persist between the High Council of State and the House of Representatives.
We welcome the sincere efforts made by the UN Secretary General's envoy, Hannah Tete, particularly with regard to her accurate reading of the political landscape and her emphasis on the need to establish a clear time frame that obliges the two councils to reach consensus on a realistic legal basis that addresses the remaining limited points of contention. While respecting the principle of consulting the people, it is time to give the people the final say in determining their destiny, starting with a referendum on the disputed articles in the electoral laws and on an alternative path in the event that disagreement between the two councils continues.
And the spokesperson for the UN support mission in Libya, Mohammed al-Assadi, confirmed that the roadmap announced by UN Special Representative Hannah Tete before the Security Council represents a comprehensive plan built on gradual and simultaneous steps aimed at steering the country toward national elections and institutional unification.
In some cases, this was the first time any
Agreement on forming a new government will follow the foundational step of restructuring the High National Elections Commission by completing its board formation, ensuring financial independence and operational capacity, and amending the legal framework for elections as recommended by the Advisory Committee within a maximum of 2 months. What sets this roadmap apart is the broad participation and involvement of many political actors, aiming to build consensus and strong support for any upcoming government.
Libya's Ministry of Interior under the Government of National Unity announced Friday that it had thwarted a failed attempt to target the UN mission headquarters in Libya with an SPG-type rocket. The ministry in a statement described the incident as a serious precedent against international missions, coinciding with Special Representative Hannah Tete's briefing before the Security Council. It added that a robust security plan was in place to secure the mission's premises, as well as embassies and diplomatic missions, in coordination with various security agencies. Relevant authorities have begun investigations to identify those involved and bring them to justice. And Algeria reaffirmed its firm commitment to advancing the agenda of continental integration and strengthen Africa's role as an influential economic force in the global order through optimal use of its promise and capacities, and by fostering solidarity, unity, and strategic complementarity. A statement from Algeria's Ministry of Knowledge, Economy and Startups said that Minister Nourdine Wadah, representing President Abdelnajid Tebboune at TICAD 9, highlighted Algeria's development model during the session dedicated to economic issues.
Algeria reaffirms its steadfast commitment to advancing the agenda of continental integration and strengthening Africa's position as an active and influential economic power in the international system through the optimal investment of its promising potential and the consolidation of values of solidarity, unity, and strategic integration. The national economy has achieved sustained growth rates thanks to deep structural reforms and an ambitious policy aimed at boosting national production and diversifying exports beyond hydrocarbons, which has reinforced Algeria's integration into the dynamics of the African Continental Free Trade Area and positioned it as the continent's third-largest economy.
The final communiqué of the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development TICAD reaffirmed the rejection of any attempt to undermine African unity. The Africa-Japan Summit adopted the TICAD 9 declaration, which emphasized that partnerships must be forged with AU member states in cooperation with organizations such as the AU Commission, the United Nations, UNDP, and the World Bank. The declaration also rejected Morocco's attempt to delete the phrase African Union member states from the closing statement, an effort seen as aimed at excluding the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, a founding member of the AU, from participating in AU bilateral meetings with foreign partners. The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention raised in its report to the Human Rights Council's 60th session the cases of Sahrawi political prisoners held in Moroccan occupation prisons, including members of the Gli Music group, sentenced under unfair rulings based on confessions extracted under physical torture. According to the Sahrawi news agency, the UN Working Group addressed the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, calling for a comprehensive and precise review of the opinions issued in 2023 concerning 18 Sahrawi detainees from the Gdeim Easy Group, as well as political prisoner Khatari Dada. The same source noted that in its report, the working group urged Morocco to put an end to the arbitrary detention of Sahrawi prisoners by releasing them, especially given the harsh conditions they face. And international activists said that countries investing in the occupied Sahrawi territories are not only taking part in the plundering of Sahrawi resources, but also reinforcing Morocco's illegal occupation of Western Sahara. A Norwegian lawyer and human rights activist in a video message called on all states to respect international law and stop exploiting Sahrawi resources under the pretext of sustainable development and the green economy. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Friday that there are currently no plans for a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. In an interview with NBC News, Lavrov explained that Putin is ready to meet Zelensky once a concrete agenda is prepared, but stressed that such an agenda does not exist at all.
Putin is ready to meet with Zelensky. There is no meeting planned, and I am not challenging this, but you cannot, I think, understand what I am saying. Putin is ready to meet with Zelensky when the agenda would be ready for a summit. And this agenda is not ready at all.
And in the same context, Lavrov said that the U.S. administration has set out a list of fundamental principles that must be accepted for political settlement. He added, however, that Zelensky has rejected all of these proposals without exception.
President Trump suggested, after Anchorage, several points which we share, and on some of them we agreed to show some flexibility.
Okay.
When President Trump brought those issues to the meeting in Washington, with Zelensky present together with his European sponsors, he clearly indicated, it was very clear to everybody that there are several principles which Washington believes must be accepted, including no NATO membership, including the discussion of territorial issues. And Zelensky said no to everything. He even said no to, as I said, to canceling legislation prohibiting the Russian language. How can we meet with a person who is pretending to be a leader?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Friday that Russia is doing everything possible to block a meeting between him and President Putin. He called on Ukraine's allies to impose new sanctions on Moscow if it shows no willingness to end the war. Zelensky's remarks came during a joint press conference in Kiev with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, where he said they discussed Ukraine's security guarantees. And for his part, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte called for strong security guarantees for Ukraine to ensure that Russia abides by any potential peace deal. Speaking alongside Zelensky in Kiev on Friday, Rutte stressed that such guarantees should prevent Moscow from seizing even 1 square kilometer of Ukrainian territory again. And U.S. President Donald Trump said Friday he will see whether Presidents Putin and Zelensky will cooperate to end the war in Ukraine. Speaking to reporters, Trump said his personal attendance at a potential meeting between the two leaders is unnecessary, adding that he does not prefer to attend.
We're going to see if Putin and Zelensky will be working together. You know, that's like oil and vinegar a little bit. They don't get along too well. for obvious reasons, but we'll see, and then we'll see whether or not I would have to be there. I'd rather not. I'd rather have them have a meeting and see how they can do. But in the meantime, they continue to fight and they continue to kill people, which is very stupid.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program has come to an end. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.